there's definitely been a lot of ups and downs in my career.
Okay.
Especially, in high school, I can think about going through growth spurts, going from a dominant athlete to having to relearn my body and being very frustrated that, I need to get back to where I was at on an own. It's a mindset. Is the glass half empty or is it half full?
Yeah.
But there's definitely been days where it was a struggle. And then I think one of the things I just kind of kept telling myself is, it could always be worse. If this is the toughest thing you're going to face, then you're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
We're so focused on just worrying about the day at hand. Don't worry about anything else. Just take care of what's in front of you.
Yep.
And, our strength and conditioning mindset was face to the grindstone.
Yep.
Go back to it and get better. Figure out maybe where you went wrong or how you can improve or what. There's always something you can always do to get better. And that's not just sport, that's everything in life. And I got to that point where I was just so sick of being injured. I didn't see the point of why am I even still running like this, I don't want to do this anymore. That was a constant struggle for me. I mean, I was very, very frustrated with it, but I mentioned James Morris, who's still one of my best friends. And it's funny, he won a Super Bowl and I've ended up playing for Team Italy. And it's kind of like, well, on paper, I think he's done a bit better. We were talking at one point. He said, you've squeezed every ounce possible out of football using it as a vehicle. And I think about it, it's like, well, he's right. It doesn't really change how much talent I had, because one way or another, I'm not going to be the greatest linebacker ever, however tough that is to swallow. But it's just reality.
So it's a huge pleasure today to welcome a former professional American footballer who played as linebacker for Iowa Hawkeyes, playing with names such as Anthony Hitchens, who was drafted by the Dallas Cowboys, Christian Kirksey of the Cleveland Browns, and James Morris for the New England Patriots. So we're delighted to welcome Palmer Foster to the show to share his secrets and sacrifices of his professional journey so far and much, much more. So Palmer, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on.
Oh, thank you very much. So before we start, Palmer, just so the viewers and the listeners at home can get to know you a little bit better, my children have come up with 10 quick-fire would you rather questions. And because it's a family portrait, we have Sebastian and Harper who are going to ask you the questions today. So I'm going to pass you over to them and then they'll make a start. Are you ready, Harper?
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to say the first one?
Would you rather game or read a book?
Ooh, that depends. I think if it's a book that I'm really into, then definitely a book. But there are a few games I enjoy, so that's a tough question. You know what? Right now, I've been in a good habit. Let's say book.
Okay. What's your go-to game if you're playing, Palmer?
I'm a bit of a nerd. I like things like Skyrim and Red Dead Redemption, just kind of like open world, just kind of go wander around.
Right, cool. Very good.
Would you rather win $1 million or earn $1 million?
I'd rather earn $1 million.
Good answer. Harper, you next.
Would you rather eat out or get a takeaway?
Very good.
Ooh, I think get a takeaway. There's nothing better than kind of just being in your element and kind of, especially if you've had an intense week, you just kind of get to relax.
Yeah, very good. What's your favorite foods, Palmer?
That's always a tricky question. And my favorite food in the world is broccoli.
Right.
That was something my mom never had to force on me, but I do love Italian food. Since moved to the UK, I've realized kind of a good curry is curry is to the UK is what kind of Mexican and Chinese food is to the US. So
okay.
Curries.
What would your favorite food be, Harper? Would it be broccoli?
No, come on, you gotta love broccoli.
What would it be, Harps?
Pizza.
A pizza, margarita pizza. Your favourite, isn't it? What about you, Sebastian?
Chips.
Nice traditional English chips. Okay, next one, you on, Sebastian?
Would you rather explore the ocean or explore space?
Oh, the ocean, without a doubt. I love scuba diving, so put me in the water, I'm happy.
What would be your favorite sea creature?
You know, I love sea turtles, but actually, as of late, I really like sea otters. I think they're quite unique. They're quite funny. River otters are hilarious because they'll go attack like alligators. You know, they'll be in their gangs and they'll beat off alligators. So it's quite funny to see those.
You ready, Harps? Yeah, you ready?
Would you rather wear Nike or Adidas?
What was that? Sorry.
Would you rather wear Nike or Adidas?
I've I've got to admit, I've always been a Nike person. University of Iowa, so I've always kind of worn Nike.
Right, okay.
Would you rather own a Ferrari or a Lamborghini?
Ferrari, without a doubt.
I'm going to say no hesitation there, Palmer.
Ferrari, they're handmade. They're made for you. Lamborghini's kind of a production car.
Yeah.
There could be some people yelling at me, but
Sebastian?
Would you rather have prime Tom Brady or Jerry Rice in your team?
I'd say primetime Tom Brady.
You ready, Harps?
Would you rather be too hot or too cold?
I think I'd rather be too cold. There's more you can do to get warm versus the other way around.
What about you, Harper? Too hot or too cold?
Hot.
Too hot. Is that because you think you'll be on holiday? Yeah. Yeah.
See, that's the right mindset to have. So maybe it makes me too hot.
Would you rather play Incredible Hulk or Spider-Man?
I think Spider-Man, because you're still kind of in control of yourself, whereas Incredible Hulk's kind of going nuts and not really sure what's going on.
Would you rather win the Walter Payton NFL Man of the Year award or the Super Bowl?
That's a very tough question. You know, winning a Super Bowl would be absolutely incredible. But at the same time, the Walter Payton Man of the Year award is a very special honor, and I've been fortunate enough to know people that have been nominated for it, and
Cool.
you know, the character that they are is second to none. You know, there's multiple people that can win a Super Bowl in 1 year. There's only one Walter Payton Man of the Year, so I would probably say the Walter Payton Man of the Year, actually.
Cool. Super. Well, thank you very much for answering them for us, Palmer. Thank you to you too. Okay, you're going to say bye-bye to Palmer, and we'll carry on our podcast. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Harper. Thanks, Sebastian.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. All right. We'll see you in a little bit. Okay? Super. Thank you very much for that, Palmer. Okay, so let's begin. So, Palmer, as you know, the podcast is to shine the light on the secrets and sacrifices all families go through to allow their children to become elite level athletes. And that's something really close to our hearts, with having 4 children currently on that journey. So my first question is, can you take me back to where it all began for yourself, and what family life was like back then, and what your childhood memories were?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say it's a pretty unique one, to be honest.
Okay.
Anyone that knows me will kind of understand where it's going, but born into a family that's always been around kind of professional sports. It's kind of, that's the narrative you're going to not always be on, but that's kind of actually happened. I was very fortunate. My dad was an NFL executive back in the day when Roger Goodell was an intern. And then he had the idea to come up with the Arena Football League, which was
Cool.
So that became a thing even before I was ever a concept in my parents' head. So
okay.
Born into an American football family, it's kind of like, well, that's probably what you're going to end up doing. No, he ran track university. He didn't play American University, though he did have a tryout with the Chicago Bears, which he got further in the NFL than I did, which is quite funny. But it was just kind of one of those things that it naturally happened. But it's great because, you know, sport was important in our family for many reasons. Also meant that I was exposed to a lot of different sport. I mean, it'd be very easy to say only American football, but my dad ran athletics
Yep.
as we were in the UK. But doing that during the summers, playing basketball,
Cool.
some baseball, I did wrestling,
Wow.
played roller hockey. So it was all kinds of sports kind of coming in. And
Yeah.
in today's age with kids, it's like they're specializing earlier and earlier, which I think is a massive shame because you're not developing other things or giving them exposure because, there are kids that are going to be late bloomers. You think about
Yeah.
some guys that, or women, or they, them, whatever pronouns we want to use, which is
Yeah.
fine. It's more of they might be a late bloomer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you might not find the right sport for them until it's later. So when we start specializing, I think it's unfortunate for children now because they might not get to find the sport that, the parent doesn't always know best, I would say.
Yeah. Well, I know from our eldest daughter who plays tennis now. She was our first, and my wife always used to like kind of dance, and she always used to like kind of horse ride when she was younger. She ended up choosing a dance kind of path. So when we had our youngest, we did kind of a similar thing. She used to do like kind of the dance. She used to go to the ballet. Used to do the tap. And it kind of got to a point where it felt like we was pushing her to do the dance and the tap and the ballet. To a point where she wasn't really enjoying it and she didn't want to kind of go to like kind of the sessions on a Saturday. So that's when we decided just to, just allow Ava to try all these different sports, and she tried the football, which she was really good at, and then she was trying the gymnastics and trying all these other kind of different sports, and then she ended up getting into the tennis, which neither myself or my wife had kind of played. So it's like you said, it's nice to allow them to kind of experience all these other sports and activities rather than, like you said, pigeonholing or getting them into that kind of sport that you may be in. But did your grandfather used to play as well, didn't he? Did he play for Iowa as well?
Yeah, you did your research. So he played American football for the University of Iowa, and
Cool.
he also played a bit of baseball and basketball as well. So
Wow.
that's kind of World War II era when it was probably a bit
Right.
different. It
Okay.
wasn't
Yeah.
professionalized amateur collegiate athletics at the
Yeah.
time, but he was a multi-sport athlete. I mean, my dad certainly was a multi-sport athlete. One of his sisters had the opportunity to play softball. She ended up not doing that, but
Right.
I think sports always just kind of been very strong on both sides of my family.
Yeah.
I don't know anything different, so
Yeah.
very thankful for it.
Yeah, yeah.
And
So a very sporty, and active family then. So it probably kept your parents quite kind of busy because I know with like again one of the reasons that we started this podcast a few months ago was to see whether we was doing something wrong as a family, like myself and my wife, because we've got 4 children that play sports and competitive sports. We have like our eldest who plays tennis, and she travels all over, say, the UK, and she'll travel abroad into like kind of Europe doing different ITF tournaments. We have my 2 boys that are playing football at the moment. Our youngest, Harper, she does her horse riding and football. And during the week, you take into like kind of tournaments or matches or picking up or dropping off, and then the same at the weekend. And we was saying to ourselves whether, well, we was asking the question, are we doing something wrong because we were just so kind of busy. And the more that we kind of reached out to professional athletes like yourself, we kind of found and came to realise that it's just the kind of norm for the parents, and obviously for like say yourself and like kind of your parents, obviously you've kind of been there and you've done that and you kind of understand that kind of journey. Whereas for us, it was something completely different because we wasn't in that bubble. So with that sports journey, was you missing any school at the time to play like your American football or?
Not until you started getting to kind of university level. I mean,
Right. Okay.
high school, middle school, it's,
Yeah.
I think back to like my summers were dominated by going to track and field. Definitely days I did not enjoy it. I
Right.
rather go
Okay.
to school or hang out with friends, not go run on a black I can't black Mondo track that's soaking up the hot Iowa sun and just burning. It wasn't the greatest experience at times, but
Okay.
really thankful for it. But I don't really recall missing a lot of school,
Okay.
and yeah, I think even if I did, my mom would have been very much on it of making sure
Right. Okay. Because I
I
know
didn't.
I asked the question because we recently had a gentleman on called Taj Minikon, and he's a professional soccer player in Australia. And he was talking about the time where he was playing, and he was leaving school at say like 1:30 in an afternoon, and his days then would be focused on like kind of training. And we had Angus Gillams on, who used to play squash, professional squash for Team GB, and he'd miss most or a lot of kind of days because of that. So I didn't know whether it was like kind of the norm or whether it was kind of quite individual.
I think thinking back to the sports that I was doing, like American football, it's once a week at most
Right.
for
Okay.
I mean, practice, yeah, it's after school,
Yeah.
but unless if it was a super far road trip. I mean, there were a couple of games where we had to get let out of class a bit early. Um, Track and field, because in the state of Iowa, it's a spring sport, not a summer sport. So we were
Yeah.
still in class. So there would be some meets where we'd get to leave early. And obviously, as a high schooler, you're like, this is great. Less of it was like the state tournament or the Drake relays,
Yep.
which go up for like the week. Yeah, then
Okay.
your stuff and your teachers were expected to kind of give you your classwork that you'd be missing, so you're not falling behind.
Right.
But
Okay. Yeah.
it, it was pretty understandable. It wasn't anything crazy.
Right. Okay. So another question that my children have been getting me to ask all our guests that we've had on recently is, can you remember your first say wow moment in the sport? So I mean, like we've had a number of guests on now. So we had Taj Minikononu, we've just kind of mentioned. His first kind of wow moment was when he was playing in Australia. He got asked to go and trial for Blackburn Rovers at the time, and that was the first kind of moment where he said it almost kind of ignited that fire in his belly to like really want to kind of concentrate and focus on being a professional kind of footballer. And we had Gina Kennedy on, who's in the top 10 in the world in kind of squash. And she was saying she was at the British Open for the first time, and it was only as recent as this year. And she said she had like her picture just kind of came up on the big screen, and there was music, and she was just like, wow, this is like I'm like kind of here. I'm like a professional kind of squash player. So have you had any like kind of moments like that?
I think growing up, I probably didn't, just
Okay,
because from a very young age, I was always in sport, and that's
right,
kind
okay,
of I didn't know the alternative. It's like this is kind of what you do,
yeah,
and I'm very fortunate to find success both in American football and in track and field at a very young age.
okay,
Qualifying for the junior national championships in track and
cool.
field, and as a kid, you don't really know what's going on. The gun goes, run.
Yeah,
Um, that's the honest reality. I'm not gonna sit here and say I was by no means was a prodigy, but it was just kind of like you're a kid. You don't really know what's going
yeah,
on.
okay, yeah, yeah,
Um, I'd say a very humbling moment for me, I
yeah,
guess, was there's an organization called Podium, and they help place American football players into professional teams in Europe and
okay,
elsewhere, and try and find European players to get them into universities in the US. And they put together a top 100 players list for Europe for American football. And,
cool.
there's 22 positions across the sport. So, 100 guys isn't actually that many at a position. And I was named to that list, which was
Wow.
incredibly humbling because
Yeah, yeah,
there's some serious guys on that list,
yep,
some
yep,
studs from like Texas and University of Florida. And I'm
cool.
sitting thinking, okay, this is pretty crazy that I've don't know what I've done, but I'm
Yeah.
very
Wow. All right. Okay. So my next, I think you've kind of answered my next kind of question. I was going to ask whether you thought you had like say a normal childhood growing up, because I know we've spoken to a number of guests on the show. Now, one of our first guests was Reece Brown, who used to play for Manchester United, and he'd talk about kind of the time at say like 15 and 16 where his friends were kind of like knocking on his door wanting him to kind of go out at night, or he was being asked to go to say like parties, and he would say getting in from training or a match, and he wasn't allowed to go out because he'd have to say like refuel, or he'd need an early night because he was up say training early in the morning. Would that have kind of come a bit later on in kind of your career then, would you say?
Yeah, I think he had to kind of be. I don't know. I'm very fortunate to have come from a loving background and family that
Yep.
I had my head on straight, and I have an older brother that kind of maybe learned some lessons for me. So I kind of
Right.
learned,
Okay.
not toe the line, but not veer far from the path.
Right. Okay.
And
Yeah.
I don't think I really ever had interest in doing kind of silly things, underage drinking or things like that.
Yeah.
It just, I maybe tried a beer once and hated it, and I was just like, well, this isn't for me, and
Yeah.
I'm busy doing sport,
Yeah.
so I'd be happy to hang out with friends, but
Yep.
I wasn't probably doing anything that crazy. It was just kind of like, this is what again, it comes back to like, this is what I know. I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
know the alternative,
Yep.
so I don't really know what I'm missing out. It wasn't like grass is green on the other side. It was just more of like, I don't know what's over there. I'm not too
Yep.
concerned about it. This is what I'm doing. This is kind of what I'm going to keep doing.
Right.
Uh,
Okay.
I don't know. Hopefully that makes sense, but it's
Yeah.
just,
No. Yeah. It does. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of interesting to think about.
Okay. Okay. So from that then, we've been asking the guests as well. So from say like representing Iowa Hawkeyes in the Western Division in the Big Ten Conference, playing for London Blitz, and then I had researched that you have had some like amazing experiences along the way, which you from the short time that we've kind of come to know you now on the show, I think you're very humble and a very kind of humble guy. Because I mean, I read that it was at the time when you was in the Italian national team, the blue team, and you had an amazing experience at training at an Italian Air Force base, I think it was.
Yeah.
And then you was arriving by coach to one of the games playing Austria in Vienna, and there was like a 3 hour kind of tailback with all the fans like kind of wanting to kind of watch the game. Um, but then you've also had times where I think you was training for the European champs, which eventually didn't get played due to there was a political situation that we read. And then obviously earning your scholarship at Durham University in England to work on your masters and play and coach football. My next question would be, how do you kind of personally cope with the peaks and troughs of the professional game? Because recently my eldest boy, Mason, he's been, for the want of a better word, like kind of rejected or let go by a professional football team here in England. So he's been like released twice now. So how do you kind of personally cope with the kind of ups and downs and the peaks and troughs of that career? Because it's obviously not just a straight line.
It's yeah, you always want to try and flatline, but out there listening knows that's pretty much impossible. I'm sure even the greats will tell you it's a very difficult thing.
Yeah.
There's definitely been a lot of ups and downs in my career. Um,
Okay.
especially, in high school, I can think about going through growth spurts, going from a dominant athlete to having to relearn my body and being very frustrated that, I need to get back to where I was at on an
Yep.
elevated. To then going to the University of Iowa and coming in with three amazing linebackers that are, I have the utmost respect in the world. And very fortunate to have been there with them. I mean,
Yep.
three guys, two of them won Super Bowls.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's kind of it's a mindset. Is the glass half empty or is it half full?
Yeah.
And I'd like to think most of the days I saw it as more half full versus half empty. But there's definitely been days where it was a struggle. And then I think one of the things I just kind of kept telling myself is, it could always be worse. If this is the toughest thing you're going to face, then you're doing pretty well,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
a lot worse, and you can always get after it than tomorrow.
Yeah.
One of the things I'm very thankful for is being at the University of Iowa. I would say it's a very humble program. I think a lot of
Okay.
people, it's got some name recognition, but it's not the same as Ohio State University or the University of Alabama. But a lot of people don't realize the University of Iowa is a top producer of NFL players.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're so focused on just worrying about the day at hand. Don't
Yep.
worry anything else. Just take care of what's in front of you.
Yeah.
And our strength and conditioning mindset was face to the grindstone. Just
Okay.
get out. And I
Yeah.
think that's probably carried through ever since then for me and kind of reiterating, like, I don't know anything else. I'm just going to kind of keep grinding away at it. And yeah, it can be tiring, especially when you get a couple days where things are down.
Yeah. Yeah.
That mindset of just putting one foot in front of another and keep going, even when it's up against you,
Yeah.
you can keep going. And it's that mental toughness that you have to develop,
Yeah.
which, it's sometimes tough. I do, I don't have kids of my own, but I kind of feel bad for kids now because they're so exposed to social media and instant gratification. I probably sound incredibly old now saying that. I think to growing up, and it's like, we didn't have social media. Like, you
Yeah.
went outside, you played around, you were in the moment and just kind of doing that, not worrying about what somebody else is doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure there are plenty of kids still that have that mindset, but I think access to global connectivity, which is a good thing, but it's
Yeah.
also, that's kind of balances of it of, are you worried about somebody else and what they're doing,
Yeah.
or are you going to focus on you?
Yeah.
And to an extent, like, yeah, you should worry about somebody else in the sense of you're competing against them.
Yeah.
You want to be better than them, but at the same time, worry about your own craft, get better at it, because if somebody does beat you, well, there's a reason.
Yeah.
Go back to it and get better. Figure out maybe where you went wrong or how you can improve, or what. There's always something you can always do to get better, and that's not just sport, that's everything in life.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. So with that then, was there any times where that you felt like kind of giving up, or was that like that mentality that you've kind of mentioned just there? Was that the overarching kind of theme that
Oh
you
no, there were definitely times. I mean, in high school, I mentioned kind of going through growth spurts,
yeah,
and I was kind of in that position of, am I going to play American football in university, or am I going to run track and field?
yeah,
And very different sports, because American football, I need to put on weight. Track and field, I need to stay lean. And my first year of high school, I had a very good year of track and field and
okay,
doing well. And it was kind of like, oh, maybe I'm going to do track. And then I started putting on weight, carrying more muscle in my legs, which, I was a 400-meter hurdler,
right,
which
okay,
you can't really carry a lot of weight. And so it ended up resulting in my last 2 years of high school, I probably ran about 6 total races because I kept pulling my hamstring because there's too much weight. And I
right,
got to that
okay,
point where I was just so sick of being injured. I didn't see the point of, why am I even still running like this?
yeah,
I don't want to do this anymore. Um, that was a constant struggle for me. I mean, I was very, very frustrated with it, but I mean, I've got to thank my parents, because they kept me calm. They kept me level headed. They,
yeah,
the support that I needed. Even if I wasn't going to run track and field in university, it was still a case of, I need to do that, because
yeah,
it's the mental toughness, and it's also great conditioning for my body. And
yeah,
coaches want to see that you can do different things.
yeah,
You're just a one sport athlete. I think it comes back to kind of being pigeonholed. It's like, oh, okay, well, what if we need to change your position within
yeah,
that sport?
yeah.
What else is done that we know, like, okay, we can kind of work with that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and again, that was one of the reasons that we wanted to kind of start the podcast as well, and to kind of shine a light on the secrets kind of behind the success of athletes, and the sacrifices that you kind of go through. Because again, when you kind of so we had a gentleman on called Lee Grantham, who's a professional ultramarathon runner, and he told us a story about when he was on the podium the first time with his like kind of medal, and he said it's not all about the podium finish. He said people see that podium finish with like that Instagrammable moment, so to speak. He said, however, people don't see the kind of the hours, the days, the weeks, and the months of the kind of hard work and the sacrifices kind of behind that to get to where they are. And he was highlighting all the kind of the peaks and troughs, and all the athletes that we've kind of had on. They've all had the stories of um, times where they've been like say let down or injured or been like kind of rejected. One of our close friends, Luke Joyce, he's played over like 600 football league appearances, and And he was saying like when he played for Port Vale, it was they played a game on the Saturday. I can't remember whether they won or they lost. He got called into the office on the Monday, and he'd walked out of Port Vale, not a Port Vale player anymore, and he had like a family and he got a mortgage, and there's loads of different stories that you kind of hear. However, the athletes always overcome those kind of obstacles and those kind of hurdles. And we had a lady on recently, Darcy Mead, who's a professional skier. And she gave us a quote towards the end of the show, and it was something like, you get knocked down 10, but you come back 11. Which I thought was like really kind of nice, because it summarized all the stories that we've kind of heard from all the professional athletes, where they have had those times of kind of devastation, or they've had some kind of real significant kind of event that's happened, and they've kind of overcome that, and then they've obviously kind of gone again. So with that, then would you say that your parents sacrificed to allow you to progress on your journey as well?
I wouldn't say they necessarily sacrificed. I think it was kind of something that they wanted and
Yeah. Okay.
prioritized and valued.
Yeah.
I definitely think they've done more than they ever should for me. I'm forever indebted and grateful to them, and I constantly remind them that. But it's, I think it's, again, I'm not a parent, but I think that's just kind of, it comes with the territory of, But then I think there needs to be a healthy line between what's good for the child versus what is the parent kind of forcing, because there's especially in the US, there's all too many parents that just impose their will on this kid, kind of dictating, this is what you're going to do, this is what, and the kid's not wanting to do it. I think there is a fine line between that, but no, I don't think my parents had to make I mean, I'm sure they made sacrifices, but I don't think they would view it as a sacrifice. I mean, especially with a parent that's always been in professional sports, I think that's, for me to go to the same university as him and his father and play, and then, have a chance to play in the league that he invented. I mean, that's kind of, I don't think you could make it any better.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So then, when you look back on your journey, then kind of positive and negatively, physically and mentally, would you say climbing the mountain has been worth the view for you?
Oh yeah, I've been able to, you mentioned James Morris, who's still one of my best friends, and it's funny, he won a Super Bowl, and and I've ended up playing for Team Italy, and it's kind of like, well, on paper, I think he's done a bit better. We talk, and at one point he said, you've squeezed every ounce possible out of football using it as a vehicle. And I think about it, it's like, well, he's right. I've gotten a master's out of it. I've moved abroad. I now live abroad. I've essentially taken second citizenship out of it.
Okay.
Not just necessarily because I was playing for Italy, but because I did it through my mom's side of the family. But nonetheless, it served as an amazing vehicle and led to all kinds of experiences that, say if I had been a bit more talented and gone the NFL route, well, I probably wouldn't be living abroad. I mean, there's not to say that could have happened, but a lot of things would have been different. Or think back to a moment at the University of Iowa where, naturally, if, I'm with three guys that started all 4 years, which isn't too often. And then you kind of get halfway through and they bring in younger guys because they eventually need to build up for that replacement. So you're in no man's land. And that's where a lot of guys would transfer to a different university to either get game time or exposure because maybe they want to go to the NFL. But it was never something that kind of crossed my mind. And Coach Woods, who's a phenomenal coach, and I can't thank him enough. I mean, he's still at the University of Iowa doing amazing things, but I remember having a conversation with him and we kind of talked about that. And he's like, I don't think you should.
Okay.
And I didn't want to, and it was never, and is the easiest conversation. It's like, if I had made the decision to transfer, maybe go to a slightly smaller university or wherever it might be. And it's like, okay, play for a year or two. To me, in hindsight, it's like, well, that doesn't really change how much talent I had. Because one way or another, I'm not going to be the greatest linebacker ever, however tough of a that is to swallow, but it's just reality.
Yep.
And now, having done what I've done, I wouldn't change anything about it, even all the lows, because it's made me who I am, and it's gotten me to where I am at this point in my life, and it's been a fantastic journey.
Okay. So as the show comes to an end, then we do have a tradition, and we ask all our guests if they have any famous quotes or philosophies that they've kind of helped them on a daily basis. And there was one that I read when you was at Iowa, which I didn't know whether it may be one that you've kind of used, and it was take care of the day that you're on. Don't worry about tomorrow until you're there. And I think you made slight reference to it earlier on.
Yeah, I mean, it was just kind of like our mindset that we had.
Yep.
I was a very, we kind of use the slogan as like we're farm tough. It's a farming state.
Right.
You just kind of grind at it. That's definitely something I think before I got to Iowa, kind of had that mindset just being from the state of Iowa. But then, being at Iowa, that's reinforced it. But one of the things, I don't really ever have had a quote or something that I, constantly use.
Yep.
One thing I definitely always tell myself is, it could be a lot worse.
Yeah. Okay.
Be thankful for what you've got, because, and I get pain and downturns are all relative, because what's relative for me isn't for somebody else. But, it could always be worse.
Yeah.
You got to be thankful, and it kind of comes back to is it half empty or is it half full?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's what mindset are you going to take, because it could always be worse. So okay, it's a half full cup.
Yeah.
Well, there's nowhere to go but up. Then if I'm
Yeah.
at my bottom, then I can go up. So
Yeah.
I think kind of mashing some things together, but there's never really been like, I've never been kind of like a philosophy guy
Okay.
living by quotes, because it's
Yep.
just I think it's a simplistic attitude of just worrying about today.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So then, so what's next on your journey? Is there any like kind of future plans or projects that you can share with us today that we can possibly look out for?
Well, so sadly, my playing career is now over. I've concluded that after 5 total seasons of playing. So my body was a bit tired, but I started a professional career, and I'm actually with a sports technology company, which is really
Cool.
exciting. It's really cool to be on the other side of things, because normally
Okay.
it's the athlete or you're kind of involved. So now it's okay. How do we help sports teams create more
Yep.
money so they can keep, especially on the women's side?
Yep.
Um, Women's sports is so severely underfunded, and how can we generate more revenue for that? So that's
Yep.
something that's been really fun. Getting to meet a lot of people, and then obviously you kind of get to talk about the old days and
Yeah, yeah. Oh, right, okay.
ups and downs, the crazy stories. Like, oh, what's everyone asks about the stories or what's your favorite memories,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's always funny because I'd love to hear kind of other people and what they think. But for me, it's never been a game or anything or practices. It's just kind of like, you'd be sat around the table eating team dinner, and just
yeah,
kind of the stories that come out, or their shenanigans that you'd
yeah,
hear, the jokes, like that's what really resonates with me. And I know some of my former teammates, that's kind of what they hold close to their heart. But yeah, it's been an interesting and joyful experience so far, and I'm excited to see kind of what comes next.
very good. So, Pam, thank you so much for being a guest on Elite Children, a Family Portrait. And I'm sure the listeners and the viewers at home can definitely see they're not alone on raising elite level children. And over the past weeks and months that we've been doing the show, we've been overwhelmed by the professional family coming out sharing such motivating, resilient, and inspiring stories. So, thank you very much for kind of adding to that today. Good luck in the corporate world and all your future ventures. And I'm sure with a mindset and a personality like yours, whatever you lay your hand to, there'll be a huge success. So, Palmer Foster, thank you very much for being a guest on Elite Children, a Family Portrait.
Very kind words. Thank you very much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'm looking forward to the next episodes that you come out with.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, Palmer.